If you've been struggling with the order of pedals when it comes to things like Univibe, wah, fuzz, then this might be the video for you. And it's certainly been something I've had issues with over the years. And this is the second in a series, the Machine Gun Chronicles, but even if you're not interested in that exactly, this video will still be useful for you. Now, in that video, I had a certain pedal order, and then I had a few comments below that one telling me that the other orders might actually be better. And my initial order was one that I'd cobbled together over, a few years, looking at forums, figuring out what the sort of perceived wisdom was. But I was having trouble with it in that video, and always have. And in that one, I was using a vintage style wah, which caused me quite a lot of issues. That was first in the order, then it was fuzz, then it was overdrive, and then it was Univibe. If you're wondering why there's overdrive at all, that's because I'm using a clean type of amp at the moment, the 2-Rock Classic Reverb. So having the overdrive after the fuzz allows the fuzz to sort of hit a bit more gain than it would otherwise. Obviously, Jimi Hendrix was using a Marshall, which he had cranked quite high up, so there was more gain. But the thing is that if you do that, your wah can feel, I don't know, sort of a bit weak. And a bit thin sounding, and your Univibe doesn't come across very strongly. So basically, I was told there were two other options. First of all, let's quickly hear what I was already doing. So you can hear the Univibe's not very strong there, and in fact I've been having so much trouble with that vintage style wah that was a hand wired one that I'd changed it this morning for a different, although vintage style wah, one that was a bit more easy to play with, which is this Vox one here. And that gave it a little bit more meat, right? But I did prefer the wah of the other one, the Cray baby that I have, this sort of like vintage style hand wired one. So I want to use that. But it was causing me all sorts of like issues. It was very thin and it just sort of, I don't know, didn't sound quite right. So yeah, I changed it over for that one. Hopefully later in the video, I can change it back for the more classic Cry Baby. If you find this sort of content, I have to, look, so I'm trying to get better at asking for subscriptions. Everyone else on YouTube does it, and I've often shied away from it just because I don't want to be asked to do it either, frankly, when I'm watching a video. So I'm not going to ask. So let's hear what happens if you put the fuzz before the Univibe. I might turn the fuzz up now. So the fuzz was at 11, I'll put it at 1, and the volume was at 2, I'll put it just a bit higher. Turn the speed up a bit, shall we? So I figured, seeing as the placement of the wah was better for the wah, I could now put the other more vintage style one back in, the Crybaby, or the more Jimi Hendrix type. So let's hear that. I think we have to put the other wah back in and let's see what happens. Turn the speed back down again. Yeah, that sounds a lot better to me. That's more of the wah sound that I want for this particular thing. The Crybaby has that very particular sound. So, okay, I'm really happy to have that one back in the chain. Okay, so really that wasn't about the placement of the fuzz and the Univibe. In that one, the wah was third. And as you can hear, the wah was just so much better sounding. It seemed to have more of a range, more definition, just sounded more wah-like. And under the fingers, it felt a lot more powerful, maybe even too much, but that's a topic for the next video probably. Right, now we want to go for what may be considered the preferred way, which is the Univibe first, followed by the fuzz. And by doing that, I guess the Univibe is going into more gain and therefore being amplified, so to speak, or made more obvious. So let's hear what that sounds like. I feel like there's too much sort of bass compared to the record. I'm going to turn the treble up. It was on just before half. Turn the bass down a little bit. Okay, with the Univibe first, then the fuzz, yeah, it does really start to feel more like the way it should. The Univibe sort of is afterwards being hit with all this stuff, and it just feels a bit more washy and a bit bigger. So that's great. What we should do is just quickly hear a short clip of those two options, fuzz first, Univibe first, one after the other, just in case you want to hear that again. Okay, I think that solved it for me in many ways. I think I prefer the Univibe first, then the fuzz, then the wah, then the overdrive when using a clean amp. But in the next video, we're going to try using a Marshall type amp. So we may not need the overdrive anymore at that point, and we'll see how that affects things. And now that I've got this order like this amp does start to sound a bit too modern for what I want. In the first video where I had the wah first, I think that was offering a lot of its tone, the thinner thing, which is, you know, if you really listen to Jimi Hendrix's live clips, his tone is really not that substantial in many ways in terms of like the bass and the depth, right? There's a lot of brittleness and thinness there. I don't mean that in a bad way, it's just the way I can describe it. And actually, that's what makes it so interesting to listen to, I think. It's not too fat of a tone. So yeah, I want to try a Marshall type. We'll see what happens with that in the next video. For regular viewers, here's a couple of things I wanted to announce. Firstly, my Patreon is still around. I haven't put a lot on it in a time, and yet still there are people who contribute to that, and I'm really grateful for them. You know, it's just a small amount, lets me sort of buy the odd pedal and stuff. But what I'm thinking is to make one exclusive Patreon video a month, which will be based on a question that Patreon members can ask me. And then, so like, I'll ask for a question at the beginning of a month, and then I'll poll which question people really want me to answer. It might be, let's say these are 10-minute exclusive videos. It might be, can you show us your best overdrive, your favorite settings, or can you just do a real quick but deep look at one particular thing of one of the amps or guitars or pedals that I've got. So that'll be for Patreon members. I'll put that out on Patreon now, as in I'll ask for a first question. I'll do that in the next day. So if you haven't looked at my Patreon, then please do. It's not a huge amount, a few pounds a month. But yeah, it's about time I get back to regular content on there. All right, in Machine Gun Chronicles number 3, we're going to try a different amp for the first time. So I'm looking forward to doing that one. I'll see you then.